What's up, guys? Welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. Today's subreddits are r/ProRevenge and r/PettyRevenge. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode. This story's called Pastor Lies, Cheats, and Steals. He gets exactly what he deserves. Sorry, I am on mobile, also sorry, but I need to be very vague about where this happened. The cast? Pastor Bob, not his real name. Contractor. Me. Setup. I have been a computer technician for more than 15 years. I have worked on all kinds of computers, everything from tiny point-of-sale computers to large rack server computers. I had been attending a new, to me, church. I was trying to date a woman there. This church was her idea. That relationship crashed and burned, but that's a different story. Now we can start. It was about 5 years ago. I had just sat through a long sermon about generosity and about giving to those that need help. At the end of the sermon, Pastor Bob asked for an additional donation because the church's roof needed repairs, and it would cost $20,000 US. That's right, 20,000 freedom dollars for a new roof. After the service, I'm talking to my date. Pastor Bob walks over to me, I say hi, and he introduced himself. We talk for a bit. Pastor Bob asked what I do for a living. I tell him I'm a computer tech with a shop. As I'm telling him, I have a feeling he already knows what I do. Pastor Bob asked me to have a look at his laptop. It's being very slow, so I agree. I turn the laptop on and I hear a clicking noise. This clues me in it's probably the hard drive, but I can still access the data. This is a good thing because it means I can probably recover the data. So I tell Pastor Bob the hard drive is dying and it needs to be replaced. I also tell him I can probably recover the data. Pastor Bob asked how much it would cost to fix. I tell him for most people I would charge around $250. However, I feel I can donate my time, so I would just need $60 for a new hard drive. Pastor Bob agrees, so I write up an invoice. New hard drive, $60. Labor, $0. Data recovery, $0. And 2 to 4 days for repair. Pastor Bob signed the invoice, so I take the laptop to my shop. I open the laptop. HP, why do you use so many screws and clips? I get the hard drive out and connect it to my recovery gig. I set up the recovery to clone the data to a new hard drive, but not the new one for the laptop, a high-end storage drive. I go home after locking up the shop. The next day, Monday, I open the shop and check the recovery rig. It's working, but it will take at least 10 more hours, so I start work on the other tickets. Then at closing time, I lock up and go home. Next Tuesday, I've had Pastor Bob's laptop for 2 days. I open the shop and check my recovery rig. Good news? Recovery completed, 100% data recovered. Report says hard drive developed too many bad sectors. Now I have a choice to make. I could put a 1TB hard drive for $60 or a 120GB SSD for $60. Or I could pay some money myself for a 240GB SSD for $100. I decide why not and put the 240GB SSD in the laptop. I then clone all the data over from the new recovery storage drive to the new 240GB SSD. An hour later, the clone is done. So I check everything, the laptop works great and is exactly like how it was before the first hard drive died. Even the login still worked. So I call Pastor Bob and tell him his computer's done. He says that's great and he will be here soon to get it. About 45 minutes later, Pastor Bob walks in. I show him his laptop working and much faster. He loves it and signs the pickup form. He then pays me with a check for $60. It's important he paid with a check. I do a bank run on Monday and Friday, so that Friday at the bank, I am informed that Pastor Bob's check is void. What? Why? Pastor Bob had placed a stop payment on the check, so I called him and he ignored my call. I go to church on Sunday. Pastor Bob gives his sermon about not lying. I walk up to him and he avoids me, so I leave and decide I'm going to write it off. I spent $100 and some time doing something nice. A few weeks later, a customer walks in looking for a new computer, so I offer him a drink and go over his options. I'm chatting him up and he leans in to tell me he's a contractor. He mostly does siding and roofing. He is thinking about offering solar. That's why he is getting a new computer. I ask how much does a new roof cost. He says up to about $10,000. So I ask him why would someone say $20,000? He had no idea. I thought it was strange. I asked about the church. Contractor said it would have been simple and around $5,000. and he could probably do it for less. Contractor buys a nice new laptop. Sorry the setup took so long, the revenge starts now. Something about what the contractor said bugs me later. Why would Pastor Bob lie and say $20,000 for a new roof? And why would he stiff me for $60? I then remember I never cleared the recovery rig storage drive. So I check, and there is Pastor Bob's laptop data. I look around, it's slow, and I'm all caught up on repair tickets. So I decided I'm going to clone Pastor Bob's data to a second laptop. I look around a bit. He had all of his logins stored in a folder on the desktop, including his online dating logins and online poker. Did I ever mention Pastor Bob is married? I start printing his online dating messages. I look back and find Pastor Bob had been adult hugging several women from his online dating. He had been paying for his dates from the church's donation fund. I am getting angry now. Then I realize he had adult hugged the woman I was dating when I was dating her. It was then I decided to break Pastor Bob. I printed out all of his dating messages and the women he adult hugged for the last 6 months, except I refused to print the naughty pictures. It was an impressive packet. I then decide I need copies of the packet, so I order 100 packets printed from a major online printer. A few days later, my order of revenge packets arrived. These revenge packets are amazing double-sided, staple-bound with a cover with Pastor Bob's face on it. Now the conclusion, and I think it's worth it. This church had a calendar of what the sermon might be about. A perfect Sunday was approaching. I go to church that perfect Sunday. I show up a bit late. Everyone is in the church, so I put a revenge packet on each car. I have a few revenge packets that are in yellow envelopes, so I put them in the mail. I sent one to all the high-ups in the church, and I sent a special packet with some of Pastor Bob's naughty pics to Pastor Bob's wife. I set the return address to the church. I also emailed a bunch of people the revenge packet from a burner email. A couple weeks later, after I went back to that church, Pastor Bob was gone. So was the wife. Several of the women were also gone, including the one I was dating. I asked one of the important people there, what happened? The answer was amazing. I was told about the revenge packet and how everyone had gotten one. The day my revenge packet appeared, the sermon Pastor Bob had given was about the evils of adultery and cheating on your wife. Thank you, church calendar. The fallout. Pastor Bob was fired and shunned. Multiple women from the church have not returned, including the one I was dating. Pastor Bob's wife is divorcing him, and she is the one that owned the house and cars. Pastor Bob is now being sued by several people, including the one that fixed the roof. He never paid any of them. There were also rumors of a criminal case for embezzlement. No one has seen Bob in a while now. The church might close if they can't find a new pastor, but the church's money is very low. Apparently, he also spent over $30,000 on online gambling. Okay, now I don't usually read the TLDR, but there's more information in the TLDR, which is weird. So pastor lies, steals, and cheats on wife with multiple women, gets found out and doxxed, gets fired, divorced, and arrested, and no one knows I did this to him. So he didn't say he was arrested. Notes, because you might ask. It's quite possible that several of the very young children and babies at the church were his, but I cannot confirm this. I have no idea where Bob is now. I would still think in jail. This kind of makes me think of that one story, The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. It's like one of those great American classic books. Even though it's like well over 200 years old, I'm gonna give you a fat little spoiler alert. But basically the story is about this woman who has a kid outside of marriage, so that's a product of adultery. Ugh. And so they made her wear a scarlet A for adulterer, and she always had to wear it, and the person who delivered that punishment is the pastor. There's more to the story, but she receives a lot of crap, because adultery wasn't very acceptable back then. But at the end of the story, it's revealed that the pastor is the daddy. Well, any hooty-dooty-doo, in the case of this story, please practice what you preach. This story's called Screwed Out of My Holiday Pay Because We Don't Have Set Schedules. 3 months later, I used the same exact phrase to my boss when asked why I didn't come in when I wasn't on the schedule. The title probably doesn't make too much sense, but it will after reading, hopefully. I'm unable to formatting. Alright, background. When I was hired for the job which I currently work, I was hired to work on Tuesday through Saturday from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. This had been my schedule for months, never changing, as I was verbally told that this was my set schedule. I even clarified this because I had to arrange childcare. For example, one week I was accidentally left off the schedule entirely and was told to just work my normal schedule. Around Thanksgiving time, we closed down for a week. The company policy is that you have to work your last scheduled shift before the break, and your first scheduled shift after in order to get your holiday pay. On the Monday following Thanksgiving, remember I'm normally off on Mondays, I got a call saying that I was scheduled to work and that because I didn't come in, I wouldn't get my holiday pay. This kind of pissed me off because I had been told I would work Tuesday through Saturday and thus had only arranged childcare those days, so I couldn't come in that day if I wanted to. The exact phrase I was told over the phone,
"It is your responsibility to check the schedule every week because we don't have set schedules."
Fast forward to this week. While checking the schedule, I noticed that my schedule is the same as normal, with the exception that I am off the schedule on Saturday. So I decide to not look a gift horse in the mouth and just take the 3-day weekend and don't mention to my boss that she left me off. So Saturday, which I normally would work, I don't go in since I'm not scheduled. I got a call from work and didn't answer. No voicemail left. Then I receive a text from my boss saying that my schedule never changes and it will be a no call, no show on my attendance record for not coming into work. I reply that I am not on the schedule and so I'm not required to come in, as it is my responsibility to check the schedule every week because we don't have set schedules. I received no further reply and am looking forward to seeing how work goes on Tuesday. Edit 1. I forgot to mention this, but I took a picture of the schedule to make sure that I can prove I was off on the schedule, in case my boss tries to write me up. And in case you don't feel like looking through all the comments, I do have a new job lined up and am just waiting for my start date before I quit this one. Yeah. Edit 2. Holy hell! I never expected this kind of response. I just wanted to vent my frustration and was proud in a petty way about being able to use the same line on my boss. From 50 people in the first hour to 13,000 in 7 hours. I'm probably not going to go back to working through the comments until tomorrow. But I will get back to it, and I'm glad I could provide a laugh or smile to some and that you all could provide one for me. And I'm very grateful for the many comments about advice, similar anecdotes, etc. And thank you for the silver. I appreciate and love you all! Oh man, I wish there was more to the story. What will we do? Damn you, author, for not making more! That damned Redditor just leaving us without more content. Oh, wait. Update! Screwed out of my holiday pay because we don't have set schedules. 3 months later, I used the same exact phrase to my boss when asked why I didn't come in and I wasn't on schedule. Hello all. As promised, my update to my post from a couple of days ago. Thanks to all for advice about the situation, things to consider, etc. Before work today, I had a follow-up interview yesterday for the new job I mentioned in the comments and an edit. I was offered the position I wanted and was told I can start as soon as I want. I came into work today intending to work the shift today before leaving as it's the last day of the pay period. When I got to work today, I clocked in and didn't see any managers or anything, so I started working. After 15 minutes or so, my boss came out and asked,
"OP, you really couldn't come in on Saturday?"
Obviously, they knew the answer and I said no. They then asked me what I was doing that I couldn't work my usual shift. I replied that it wasn't their concern what I do on a day I'm not at work. They simply nodded quietly and walked away. About an hour later, boss came over and asked to see me for a minute. I go to their office and there is a manager. They are above me and lower than boss, sitting in there as well. A condensed version of the discussion. Boss has a write-up and gives me a spiel about the attendance policy and said I have to get written up for a no-call, no-show. I refused to sign the write-up as I wasn't scheduled, so I couldn't no-call, no-show a shift I'm not scheduled for. Manager seemed a little confused. I don't think they were told that boss didn't put me on the schedule and that's why I didn't show up. So I pull a picture up of the schedule on my phone and show it to the manager, who then agrees with me that it wasn't a no-call, no-show. Boss said I know what my normal schedule is as a full-time employee and so I should have clarified that it wasn't a mistake. I said it wasn't my responsibility to double check the schedule they put out and reminded them that I was told my responsibility was to check the schedule every week because we don't have set schedules. Boss said something about for future reference about working my normal schedule, and I said, okay, and asked if I could go now. I debated whether or not to stay the rest of the shift before deciding to go ahead and leave. So I wrote and signed and documented a note saying I was quitting effective immediately, and I left it on boss's desk and told the manager on my way to the time clock. This is the first and only time I've quit without giving 2 weeks notice. Sorry the ending wasn't more exciting, but I'm super excited to be starting my new job and am happy having been able to share my story. The revenge was satisfying to me, and I'm glad to be starting a better job with a better environment. Thank you all for enjoying it with me. That's more like it. That's right, you put an ending to the story. I applaud you, and I apologize for my... Actually, you know what? That was an appropriate reaction. So, yeah, you had me going there for a second, yo. Also, good job on quitting and being a quitter. I'm sure you feel real proud about that. Jokes aside, good job. It must have been really, really satisfying to use their words against them. It's always fun that. I love doing that to my dad, because, you know, he can be a spiteful bastard sometimes.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.